Flying triangle. You probably think this helicopter was edited, but it was actually real. In the 1970s, the Soviet Union designed the Mi-32, a helicopter so weird it looked like someone glued 3 helicopters together. The plan was to create a giant heavy-lift aircraft capable of carrying huge construction equipment and military cargo across remote areas. Each corner of the triangle had its own rotor and engine, making the whole thing look more like a boss fight than an actual vehicle. Engineers believed it could lift over 100 tons, but the project was eventually canceled because it was too difficult and expensive to build. Even today, the Mi-32 is still one of the strangest aircraft concepts ever imagined. The real UFO. This futuristic aircraft failed so badly, it became one of aviation history's biggest flops. The Avro Canada VZ-9 Avrocar was built during the Cold War as a real flying saucer for the US military. Engineers believed it could hover like a helicopter and fly faster than a jet. The circular design looked decades ahead of its time, but there was one huge problem. The moment it lifted a few feet off the ground, it became wildly unstable. Pilots struggled to control it, and one even described the experience as trying to fly a manhole cover in a hurricane. Despite years of testing and massive funding, the Avrocar never came close to meeting expectations, and the project was abandoned in 1961. Dragonfly. Modern helicopters might not exist without this flying egg beater. The Sikorsky H-5 Dragonfly entered service in the 1940s and quickly became one of the first helicopters trusted for real rescue missions. At a time when most people still saw helicopters as experimental machines, the H-5 was flying into mountains, forests, and combat zones to pull injured soldiers and downed pilots to safety. It could hover in place, land almost anywhere, and reach locations normal aircraft simply could not. That made it a huge breakthrough for search and rescue operations during World War II and the Korean War. By modern standards, it looks tiny, fragile, and slightly unsafe. But back then, this thing was cutting-edge technology. The exposed tail boom, bubble canopy, and awkward shape gave it a very strange look, but the performance mattered more than appearances. Helicopters like the Dragonfly helped prove that vertical flight was practical, reliable, and incredibly useful in emergencies. A lot of modern rescue helicopters can trace their roots back to machines exactly like this one. Skycrane. Imagine seeing a flying crane carrying an entire house over your city. Most people would think they were looking at some kind of experimental machine from the future. But the Sikorsky S-64 Skycrane has been doing exactly that for decades. At first glance, this helicopter looks completely unfinished. It has a tiny cockpit, giant landing legs, and almost no body at all. But that strange design was actually one of the smartest engineering decisions ever made in aviation. The Skycrane was built for one purpose: lifting things that other helicopters simply could not handle. Instead of wasting weight on passenger space, engineers stripped the aircraft down to the bare minimum so it could carry massive cargo underneath its frame. That made it perfect for moving construction equipment, power transformers, military vehicles, giant trees, and even entire houses through the air. One of the craziest things about the Skycrane is how precise it can be while carrying insane amounts of weight. Pilots can carefully lower huge cargo onto mountaintops, deep forests, or crowded construction sites with incredible accuracy. It became especially useful in places where roads were impossible to build or disasters made normal transportation useless. The helicopter also became famous for fighting wildfires. Special firefighting versions can carry thousands of gallons of water and dump it directly onto massive fires in seconds. Watching one fly overhead feels less like seeing a helicopter and more like watching a giant mechanical insect built to carry the impossible. Even though it first flew in the 1960s, the Skycrane is still used today because very few machines can do what it does. It might look weird, ugly, or even unfinished, but that strange design turned it into one of the greatest heavy-lifting aircraft ever created. The hoverboard. Some people call this a genius invention. Others say it was one of the most useless military ideas ever built. The Hiller VZ-1 Pawnee was an experimental US Army aircraft that took a very unusual approach to flight. Instead of a cockpit, seat, or even a frame around the pilot, it was designed as a small, circular platform that a person would simply stand on. Underneath were lift fans that pushed air downward to raise it off the ground. The goal was to create a personal flying device that could hover and move in any direction based on how the pilot shifted their body. It was meant to be simple, fast to learn, and useful for battlefield mobility. But the reality was much less smooth. It was hard to control, unstable in anything but ideal conditions, and required careful balancing just to stay level. While it did manage to fly in tests, it never became practical for real use. Today, it is remembered as one of the most unusual experimental aircraft ever built, sitting somewhere between brilliant idea and complete engineering curiosity. Flying donut. What if I told you this strange flying cylinder helped shape the future of military drones? Back in the 1990s, Sikorsky was experimenting with a bizarre unmanned aircraft called the Cypher II. At first glance, it looked less like advanced military technology and more like a flying kitchen appliance. But hidden inside that giant cylinder was some seriously forward-thinking engineering. The aircraft used a ducted fan system, meaning its rotors were enclosed inside the body instead of sticking out like a normal helicopter. This allowed the Cypher II to take off vertically, hover with impressive stability, and operate in tight urban environments where traditional aircraft struggled. It was designed for reconnaissance and surveillance missions, giving the military a compact unmanned platform years before drones became a battlefield staple. Despite successful testing, the project eventually faded away as military priorities shifted and newer technologies appeared. But many of the ideas tested on the Cypher II later showed up in modern drone development. So while most people forgot about the strange flying cylinder from the 90s, its influence may still be flying around today. Skycar. Imagine driving a Jeep straight into battle and then lifting off like a helicopter. That sounds like science fiction, but the US Army actually tried to build it. In the late 1950s, Piasecki Aircraft created the VZ-8 Airgeep as part of an experiment to reinvent battlefield transport. The idea was simple: build a vehicle that could hover low to the ground, move over swamps, mud, and rough terrain, and avoid enemy radar better than helicopters. Instead of using traditional rotor blades, the Airgeep had two giant ducted fans built into the body, giving it the look of a floating platform from the future. During testing, it managed to fly successfully and even impressed some pilots with its stability. But there were major problems. It was extremely noisy, vulnerable to enemy fire, and struggled with speed and performance compared to helicopters already in service. In the end, the Airgeep never entered production, but it remains one of the strangest and most ambitious aircraft experiments ever attempted by the military. The Penetrator. The military made a plane so secret, most people still think it never existed. And no, stealth aircraft are not actually invisible. The Aerocraft Stealth Star 204 SS became famous for looking absolutely ridiculous while also being strangely advanced for its time. The aircraft used unusual stealth-focused shapes designed to scatter radar signals and sneak through enemy defenses undetected. But instead of looking sleek like modern stealth jets, it looked more like a flying science project from the future. Its mission was to penetrate deep into hostile territory without being seen, which earned it the unforgettable nickname, the Penetrator. And yes, military engineers somehow said that out loud in meetings without laughing. What makes this story even weirder is that very little official information about the aircraft ever surfaced, turning it into a legend among people obsessed with strange military technology. Whether it was a revolutionary stealth project or just an ambitious experiment, the Stealth Star became proof that some of the weirdest aircraft ideas are also the hardest to forget. The banana. The military once trusted this flying banana to save lives. The Piasecki HRP Rescuer looked like something straight out of an old cartoon, with its long, curved body and oversized spinning rotors. That strange shape earned it the nickname the Flying Banana, but the design actually solved a major problem. Its bent fuselage helped keep the front and rear rotor blades from colliding during flight. Built in the 1940s, the HRP Rescuer became one of the first military helicopters used for rescue missions, troop transport, and cargo delivery. Its success helped inspire future tandem rotor helicopters like the CH-47 Chinook that are still flying today. If you want to support me making these types of videos, check out the Join button and become the Uncivil Mastermind today. Or click on the video that's on screen right now.